Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, thanks for clicking. I'm Jim Langley. Usually we're working on bicycle projects in the shop here, but today I have something special planned. We're gonna head down to Paul Sadoff's shop. Paul Sadoff is just a couple miles from here on the west side of Santa Cruz. And Paul's the founder and owner and head frame builder at Rock Lobster Cycles. Paul's been building bicycles since the 1980s, so he's a great guy to talk to about the state of custom building, and we can learn a lot from him. So I'm gonna head down there and we'll do an interview with Paul. That's what's coming right up. All right, this is the world headquarters of Rock Lobster Cycles. And we'll go in, we'll say hello to Paul. Hey Paul, so I'm just going to tell everybody we met when I went to work at the Bicycle Center back in 1980, remember?
Yeah, you were touring through town and you needed to take a break and get some money together, and you came into the shop and you were eminently qualified and everybody loved you, so yeah.
Well, I just wanted to come down and interview you because I thought you'd be a great resource for people interested in buying a custom frame, because nobody's been building frames longer than you. And
Not many. No.
Not many.
No.
So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to ask some questions that would help people in purchasing a new frame.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought we'd sit down and do an interview here.
Okay.
And ask you some questions and pick your brain a little bit.
Sure.
All right.
What's left of it?
We could just start with a little bit of your background. How'd you get into cycling, and how'd you end up deciding to be a frame builder?
Well, the decision was made for me, but I'll get into that by cycling was just a good way for me to escape from my home situation. Not like I had a bad upbringing, but I like to get away. I like to get away as often as possible. And so I got a bike when I was maybe about 7 years old, and I kind of destroyed it. And my parents decided, okay, well, he's not going to have a bike anymore. So I didn't get another bike until I was about 11, and then I got one. What happened was my sister got 2 bikes for Christmas, and I got 0. And so they traded in one of her bikes so that I could have one.
Right.
And so then I had a bike, and then I really started going places and realizing that I just love the freedom of it. So that's kind of where it came from, just escaping, and it became a very all-consuming activity in my life from that point on.
I think you worked at Hollywood Schwinn, a big bike shop in LA, right?
Yeah, since my early teens, I really, really wanted to work in a bike shop. I just thought it would be the greatest thing in the world. As you and I know, it's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world, but it's pretty cool, you know? I mean, if you enjoy it.
Yep.
There's good days and bad days. And I applied to shops when I was about 15. And nobody would take me. They said, oh, you don't have any experience. And I thought, well, of course, that's why I'm coming here, so I can get experience, you know? And no, nobody would hire me until I had just finished 2 years of college, and I was working at a donut shop, graveyard shift, and somebody came in and noticed my bike, and I'd done a lot of work to it. Done a lot of custom stuff in terms of putting really high-end components on it, not a particularly good bike. And this guy noticed, like, what are you putting all this great stuff on this crappy frame for? And I said, well, I'm hoping to get the money together to get a good frame. He said, well, my father owns a bike shop, and if you want part-time work, because it looks like you know how to work on a bike. I said, well, I don't know everything, but I know enough to do what you see. He said, yeah, we've got a shop in Hollywood Schwinn Cyclery. And I said, well, I can't quit my job for a part-time job. If you get a full-time opening, I'd be interested. And 4 days later, I got a phone call because I gave him my phone number, and he said, do you want to start? And I said, sure, 6 days a week. And that was Hollywood Schwinn.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they hired me with no experience, just based on the owner's son coming to where I worked and saw that I'd put all these nice components on this cheap frame.
So I met you at the Bicycle Center, like I said
Yes.
at the outset, and after I left the Bicycle Center and went back to Vermont to work, before I came back to the Bicycle Center again, somewhere in there you made the decision to be a frame builder. How'd that happen?
Well, I had put a down payment on a frame at the Bike Center, a Bob Jackson Messina. It was beautiful. It was white and blue. I just fell for it, and that was my my way to get a nice frame for all those good parts that I'd accumulated in the previous, year and a half working at Hollywood Schwinn. So I put $50 down on it, and Roger, the owner, said he'd hold it for me. And then 3 weeks later, something happened, and I needed that $50 back. And Roger said, "Oh yeah, you can have the $50 back. Don't worry, that frame's been hanging on the wall for 3 years. It's not going to sell." And then a couple weeks later, it sold.
Wow.
So then I had a little bit of money, and the frame I wanted, the one in the entire shop that I could afford that would fit me, was sold. So it turned out that Roger had a son-in-law named Dean Hovey. And Dean had built probably, 50 or 60 frames under his own name, and had stopped because he'd gotten into high-tech. He's kind of a fairly famous high-tech guy, actually. He was one of 2 people who invented the mouse for a computer.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
cool.
this is
I
way...
didn't know that about Dean. Wow.
Yeah, no, he's a brilliant guy. And he was there at the beginning of Silicon Valley. And so he had accumulated a bunch of tubing in his frame building days, and he decided he wanted to liquidate it. And so he brought this rack of tubing, and the 2 other mechanics besides myself looked at it, and Dean said, "You want tubing? You guys want to build frames?" And we were all interested in it. And he said, "Reynolds set, $20. Columbus set, $30. I'll throw the lugs in for free."
Wow.
And so we all got tube sets from him. We all started filing on lugs and making plans to build frames. And I was the only one who actually carried it out, but I wouldn't have been able to carry out if I had no tools or knowledge. Somebody came to town by the name of Ross Schaefer, who later created a company called Salsa. And Roger and Marcy, the owner, and his wife were going to go to Hawaii, and he needed one more employee to fill out the staff for the 3 weeks they'd be gone. And Ross came in, and he had bike shop experience, so he came in as a temporary employee.
I didn't know Ross worked at the bicycle center. That's cool.
Yeah, not for long, but
yeah.
And he brought in one of his bikes, and Ross said, or Roger said, "Ross, yeah, if you want to put it here, yeah, you can display it." So he was displaying one of his bikes, and I got fascinated by Ross's frame building. He built maybe 7 or 8 frames at that point.
Where do you come from, Ross?
He's from Southern California.
Oh, Southern California. Okay.
Yeah, I think Santa Ana, City of Orange, or something like that.
Okay.
And he had worked in a machine shop, and he worked in bike shops, and he was a cyclist. He did a little bit of racing, and I told him that I was trying to build a frame, and he said, "Well, I'm really broke, but I have some experience, so I can help you build your first frame if you help me buy some flux and some silver solder, and maybe get some oxygen and acetylene for my tanks." And I said, "Sure." Being the $2.25 an hour guy, I actually had a cash flow where he didn't. I was a wage earner. He was living out of a Volkswagen van at the time. So, yeah, and so he helped me build my first frame. And the first frame it looked good, but it didn't ride great. And I don't know, being a stubborn person, I decided, well, I'm going to build another one, only I'm going to build this one right. I'm going to listen to Ross more than I had been. And I'll build a frame for my sister. And so then I built one for my sister, and then somebody else wanted one, and so I built that one, and then I decided, I'm going to build a road bike for myself, because my first frame had been a track frame. So I just started doing it, and it became a hobby. And for the next 9 years, it was a hobby.
Wow, 9 years. So were you working on bike shops at the same time, or were you just...
I was working more than bike shops. I worked in bike shops till 85, and then I was a full-time musician in a band.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Before that, I was a part-time musician playing in all the little...
You're a lead guitarist, right?
I am, yeah. But I play whatever guitar anybody asks me to do.
You're still playing in bands.
I just got headhunted for a country western band. I've only been in for about 4 weeks.
Nice.
And so I'm back at it.
So you love playing guitar?
I really do, yeah. So, 2 things I like are bicycles and music, and so...
you used to have a big electric guitar collection, right?
I had a lot, but now I still have a lot of guitars, but I'm trying to thin it down.
But guitars are like bikes, right? They're handmade musical instruments, right?
Yes, and they all have their own unique personalities and stuff. They all have something to offer.
So there's a parallel. It's cool.
Yeah,
so I appreciate that. So, a lot of people, I think, watching are going to have questions, like if they want to build a frame, or they might want to build a frame, but they might want to buy a frame. How many frames do you build a year now?
Well, so far this year I've built 49, so I think I'm going to build close to 100 this year,
100
which was not the plan. I wanted to build less, but
You have a lot of orders.
I do.
Yeah. They
And
come in from all over the world, or?
The frame that's right in back of us is going to Switzerland. The frame before that is going to the Philippines. So they go all over.
Wow, that's awesome. What's the most amazing thing anybody's done on one of your bikes?
It'd be hard to say. There was a team from the island of Guam that was in the 1992 Olympics.
Wow.
That raced pursuit and time trial on some frames I built.
No way.
I was working out of my garage. I'd only been
track
open.
Bikes.
Yes.
Track frames. Wow.
Yeah. So
you
there
build
was
all
that.
frames: track bikes, road bikes, touring bikes, gravel bikes, mountain bikes.
Whatever anybody asks me to build, as long as it isn't something that's too far out of my zone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say comfort zone, because building frames it's a fight no matter how you do it.
I mean, what's the basic process of building a frame? I mean, you start with the tubes, and you got to make the tubes fit. So you cut and miter the tubes so they fit together.
Yeah.
And then you weld them together.
Well, the first thing you do is you do the design. You do the drawing.
You do a drawing, right?
And the drawing can't happen unless you have fit information for whoever you're building it for. So you get the fit information, and then you translate fit information into a two-dimensional drawing. And then from that drawing, you can get coordinates to figure out how long the tubes are supposed to be, what size cutters you're supposed to do for the miters so the tubes fit together, and the angles of the miters, and you get all that off of the drawing.
And you use your machine tools to do the mitering. It's not done by hand anymore.
I do. Some people do it by hand, but if you're doing this for a living, like I am, and you're trying to keep your prices competitive, you have to be able to do it pretty rapidly, which means using machines.
Yeah.
So, and also, when I built my first, 20 some odd, 30 frames without machines, I was cutting my fingers all the time with, hacksaws, sharp tube ends and stuff.
Yeah.
With machines, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's a good
There's
thing.
very little filing or sawing done by hand.
See, you've got a fancy frame jig behind us, and this is how you set the tubes up to stage it for the brazing or welding.
Yeah, I think if you're doing this for a living, it's pretty essential to have what's called a frame jig, a frame fixture. And this is the best one I've had so far. It's made by somebody, I think in Massachusetts. It's called a Sputnik.
Sputnik.
Yeah. I've had a number of different commercial fixtures, and then I have another one that was made for me out of scrap metal that I built my first 1,500 frames with. And,
wow.
And
how many frames have you built all told over the years?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500.
Wow, that's a lot of frames.
I mean, the first 9 or 10 years I was a hobbyist, so I was only building like 2 to 6 frames a year, whereas now I build 90 to 100 a year.
Now, you build with steel and aluminum mostly now?
Yeah.
Did you ever try building carbon or titanium?
I built one titanium frame with this other fellow by the name of Mark Hoffman.
Oh, yeah.
And I used his equipment, and he was looking over my shoulder while I was doing the welding. And it was really an arduous process, but this is close to 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm kind of ready to try it again. I've been saying that for the last decade or so. And Mark gave me a nice titanium tube set so I can do it. I just haven't done another one.
You have to use, you have to flood the joints with argon gas, right? Or else,
yeah.
If you get anything dirty, you can't recycle it, right? You got to start all over.
Pretty much, yeah.
So it's not very forgiving material to build frames with.
It's real fidgety, and it has to be really, really clean, and I've always felt that my shop is too dirty and I'm too much of a slob to do it. But now I have a shop that is quite a bit cleaner. I have a stainless steel welding table I just got from Mark only a week ago. And then I have this fixture that can be retrofitted to flood the joints with argon.
Wow.
So I think it would probably cost me about $200 to tool up at this point to do a titanium frame, and I hope to do one. It's just that with the amount of work that I have for steel and aluminum, I just can't really afford the time.
Yeah.
I do block out a 1 week period between Christmas and New Year's where I do projects like that.
So, I did build a steel frame. I have some concept of how that goes, but you build a lot of aluminum bikes. And,
yes.
Back in the day when the first oversized aluminum bikes came out, there was a concern about the welding of them, the joining of the tubes, creating, warping the tubes. So they would heat treat the frames, which was this real delicate thing. And how has that all changed? Or you now have good tubes that you can...
Things changed about maybe 89, 1990. A company called Easton decided to introduce a new alloy of aluminum into frame building. It had been used in aerospace. And most of the aluminum bikes up to that point have been made out of 6061 aluminum, which needs to be a full heat treat where they heat the metal to a certain temperature and then they quench it quickly, and that's when they can warp. So they used 7000 series after that. Easton came up with a tubing called Easton Elite Very Light Tubing, and it was 7005, and it does not need to be quenched like in a heat treat process. It just gets baked at 2 different temperatures, fairly low. Like I think 200 degrees for a certain amount of time, 320 degrees for a certain amount of time. It's about a 10-hour period, and it really doesn't move around.
Oh.
And it becomes very, very strong after the heat. It's called artificial aging.
Oh.
And it's great material. It has a little bit of a different ride, a little bit more supple ride, so it's less problematic to work with. I think it rides better, in my opinion. Although the difference is pretty subtle and debatable whether I'm feeling the frame or feeling the tires. But
yeah, I mean, how do you answer that question? I mean, if somebody says, well, should I get a aluminum frame or should I get a steel frame, Paul? I ask you that question. How do you...
It's pretty easy. I just tell people, if you are ordering a dedicated racing frame, you should probably get it out of aluminum. It's lighter and stiffer. But if you want a bike to keep for the next, 20, 30, 40 years, one that will never fatigue, because aluminum has a finite fatigue life, then you should maybe go to something like steel.
So the other thing, you can't repair an aluminum frame. If you crash an aluminum frame and bend a tube, can you put a new tube in?
Yeah, but then you have to strip the frame and re-heat treat it or re-age it.
You do have to, because it's the second time you applied heat. So then it does create the process. Now, I mean, I've seen you weld a steel frame. You TIG weld, or you can build a frame, braze a frame with lugs.
Yes.
Either way.
Mm-hmm.
And but aluminum, how is aluminum TIG welding? How do you?
It's all TIG welding.
It is TIG, so it's just a different filler material.
Yeah, and it's a different current. Steel is done with DC, direct current, and aluminum is done with alternating current. So.
So you built all these steel bikes, and then you decided, okay, time to get into aluminum. Was there a big learning process to bring the skills you had for steel over to aluminum?
There still is.
Oh, okay.
With aluminum, I think with aluminum or steel, it's like, I don't know, that's what keeps frame building interesting, is there's always something you can improve on. And there's always a new mistake to be made.
I've seen pictures on your Facebook page of what looked to me to be perfect TIG welds and other construction on both. I mean, I don't. I'm not an expert.
I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not necessarily as good as I want to be.
Yeah.
I probably never will be. But I see examples of other people's work who I consider the best, and I'm getting closer and closer to them. But
yeah, that's a good question. What are some of the? I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and you're very well known and recognized. Who do you look up to out there when you think of great frame builders?
Well, a lot of them. Unfortunately, a lot of them have passed away. I looked up to Bruce Gordon, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I became good friends with him over a period of about maybe 12, 13 years. I look up to Ross Schaefer, who's like my first mentor. He's just a perfectionist, a very, very hardworking person, very, very dedicated. His stuff was great. And then on the aluminum side, Jason Grove.
Oh, wow.
He's a great welder. Yeah, he kind of welds for other people. He has his own company called El Camino Fab. He kind of goes in and out of building. He's one of these really, really talented guys, but I think he's doing other stuff besides building. But and then Frank Waddleton, otherwise known as Frank the Welder.
Yeah, I've heard of Frank.
Both those guys, I look at their stuff, I went, I got a ways to go before I can consider myself, approaching their league. Well, I mean, there's a lot of other guys I look up to. I think that Richard Sachs is pretty amazing how he's taken a style of frame building from the mid-'70s, and he has not departed from it. Yeah, he has not compromised. He does what he does, and if somebody wants something different, then he sends them somewhere else, really. Whereas me, I'm kind of more of an omnivore. I look at new stuff. I look at what the big manufacturers are doing, and I want to try and do that.
Yeah.
I want to try and stay as up to date as I can.
Before you started, I remember you used to repair a lot of frames.
Yes.
So you must have learned a lot taking apart all kinds of broken frames and fixing them for people from, they came from all around the world.
Yes.
Italy, France, and,
I learned
England.
I learned pretty quickly whose stuff was good and whose stuff was just a good paint job.
Take it apart, you can see.
Yeah, some of the frames that I thought were really great frames turned out to be pretty poorly constructed. And other ones that I thought were just production frames that looked like they were slopped together from the outside, actually inside were well brazed. They were solid.
Wow.
I was surprised. So you learn a lot. I think you learn more from repairing frames than from building them.
That's cool. Looking at modern bikes, when somebody comes to you and says, Paul, I want to buy a frame, but not really sure. I don't know if I want a road bike or should I get a gravel bike? That seems like a big question for a lot of people today. They're totally different, but in some ways they're very similar, and a lot of people are wanting to get off the road and ride on the gravel. So how do you talk to somebody like that and point them in the right direction?
Well, that's an uncomfortable question for me because I feel that, especially if they're ordering a frame from me, I'd much rather have it fill a need that is established. And if they don't know, but they want to get a bike, they want to ride a bike, but they're not sure what they're going to be doing, I say, well, where do you live? What kind of riding is there? Mm-hmm. How safe is it to ride on the roads? Would you prefer to be in the dirt? Is there good dirt riding or whatever? And so I ask them that. Ideally, I think a bicycle is a tool. It's something that should fill a need. There's people that consider a bike like a work of art, and they just gush over them or fetishize them or something like that. And that's valid. It's bike collectors. I mean, I have kind of a bike collection myself, and I kind of make fun of the whole bike collecting thing to a certain degree. But really, I understand, the whole romance of really cool old European bikes.
Right.
But I don't really service people like that, I don't think. I think it's more people that kind of know what they want and think I'm the guy to build it for them. But
most people come to you and they have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, so I can steer people to a certain way, but I don't feel really comfortable telling them, well, you need this kind of bike. I'd rather have them make that decision without my influence.
So here's a related question. So, back we used to call it bicycle touring.
Mm-hmm.
We put panniers on our bike and racks on our bikes, and we'd hit the road. Pretty much, we'd stay on the road. And we're right next to one of the great tours from, all the way from Washington all the way down to San Diego. You can ride the whole coast. It's beautiful. But these days, an awful lot of people want to go what we call bikepacking.
Yes.
So they're more inclined to take something more like a gravel bike, and they don't want to put racks on. They want to travel lighter, and they want everything tucked in, so the bags hang on the frame. Is that something? Well, you're going to take that into consideration if they tell you that when you build them a bike.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out. And how does that bike differ from your regular gravel bike? Just more braze-ons?
If they want them, yeah. There's certain things like the frame has to, the main triangle frame, the front portion, has to be a certain shape in order for their bags to fit in. And you can't have the water bottles in the way of the bags. And so it's like juggling certain things so that they don't crash into each other. And then the geometry might be a little bit different. A bike that's going to take a lot of weight has to have a little bit less like oversteer, which is designed for stability at high speeds, hard cornering. The front end has to feel a little lighter so that when you have a heavy load on the frame, it doesn't take a lot of energy to steer it. So those are differences. Bikes tend to have a little bit of longer wheelbase too, and bigger tire clearance because if you've got yourself on the bike, that's one thing, but if you have yourself and 20, 30 pounds of gears, you're probably going to want to run bigger tires.
People are doing some pretty epic rides on those bikes like that. They just take off and disappear.
Yeah.
But do you still get people that want to buy a touring bike and tour on the road?
Almost never.
Never now, yeah.
Yeah. The last touring bike I built, like real touring bike, was one I built for myself for a bike show in 2018, I think, and it has 30 miles on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
but that's my fault for not getting away from my work.
So I know you built a lot of cyclocross bikes. You even sponsored a team, right?
I still sponsor a team.
You still sponsor a team. How many riders are on the team?
I don't know.
It changes every year. Well, the season's not here yet, right?
Season is approaching, beginning of September. I think we probably have about 8 elite riders. So like people who might go to the nationals. And then we have a lot of B category riders and masters. Like myself, I'm a master. I race 65 plus, so.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, too. I mean, I know you're an accomplished cyclist. People might think as a frame builder you wouldn't have time to train and ride, but I know you made it to Cat 2, didn't you, for a while?
No, I didn't quite make it to Cat 2. I was hoping when I was about 26 to be at Cat 2 on the road, and I got pretty close. But then I had a couple really bad crashes, and I just quit racing at that point. And I was a Cat 3, and now I'm a Masters Cat 3, and I've never ascended further than that. Although, I don't know, on paper I'm probably a little better than that, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, you're still hanging with guys much younger and stronger on the group rides. And I know a few years ago you did Paris Paris, which is, people don't know, an incredible accomplishment, 1,200 kilometers. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how you do it. It's epic.
That was 1995. I was 39 years old. So, yeah.
Still.
But I thought about doing it again, but then I became sensible and realized that it's just too arduous. No, I don't consider myself, a great or talented cyclist. I'm very enthusiastic. Well, and I just make time in my life for it because I wouldn't be a frame builder if it wasn't for riding bikes. And if I stopped riding bikes, then this whole building thing, this whole being involved with bicycles wouldn't be pointless, but I wouldn't be getting the same amount out of it that I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know another frame builder who is wheelchair bound, who still builds. He was a very, very avid rider, got hit by a car, almost died, but he was a frame builder before he got hit, and he came out of the coma, recovered to a certain degree, and went back to building bike frames, because that's what he did. He builds bikes that he can't ride, but he's really good at it, and his spirit is super strong, and he's very talented at what he does.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Steve Garrow in Flagstaff, Arizona. Coconino Cycles. Great builder.
Beautiful area. We were just there.
Yeah.
Incredible riding.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could be riding anywhere, what would your favorite ride be now? Where do you love to ride?
It depends. Dirt riding, kind of around here, really. Santa Cruz Mountains I like. I like some of the dirt riding around...
Are you on a gravel bike most of the time?
Yeah, I hardly even ride my mountain bike anymore.
Yeah.
Although it's getting really, really dry up back there. So I'm starting to think about breaking out the mountain bike with the shock fork and the bigger tires. I'm just lazy. It's just the gravel bike or cross bikes are faster.
It's real. Yeah, that's a good question. The difference between a cross bike and a gravel bike, are there a big difference between those two bikes?
Marketing. There's only a slight difference. It's just the gravel bike can take bigger tires. That's about it. A cyclocross race bike doesn't need to have really big tires on it, like 33 millimeters, whereas a gravel bike, some of them are like 2-inch tires now.
And the gravel bikes you're building mostly now, are they aluminum or steel?
It's a mix. I think I've done more steel ones this year than aluminum, but only slightly.
Is there a cost difference? Same price, aluminum? So the materials cost about the same and the time is about the same?
The steel materials cost more, but the aluminum, the process costs more because I have to heat treat. So it balances out. It's about the same amount of money.
And you have a choice of any paint job you want, or with aluminum, is it anodization or?
No, it's paint. I've never had anything anodized. What you get with my frames is you get the choice of any powder coat color, and then I decal a frame here, and then it goes and gets a wet clear coat over it. So it's like a 2-stage process.
Nice.
So if somebody wants all wet paint, like not powder coat, but applied with a spray gun and catalyzed or whatever, that
like your splatter paint jobs I saw on Facebook page.
That was like another $700 to get that done.
Wow.
Yeah, wet paint's really, really expensive. So the stock powder coat and clear coat is included in the price, but if somebody wants something fancier than that that adds to the price of the frame.
Powder paint is extremely durable, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's really, really durable.
And they must, I mean, I've seen your frames. I don't know if I'm looking at powder coat or, well, I mean, I guess I could tell the difference, but powder paint is pretty nice.
It's getting a lot better.
Yeah. It's changed. You have more colors now, and you can pretty much get what you want.
Hundreds and hundreds of colors.
Yeah.
Not all of them spray on that smooth, but a lot can be done to smooth them out after this process. Like there's a powder clear can be put on, and then when the wet clear is put on, it can be glassy smooth, just like wet paint.
I mean, what's the best way to contact you to order a bike if somebody's interested? Do they go on the website? I know you have a really nice website, rocklobstercycles.com.
Just had the website completely redone last fall. Yeah, so it's got my phone number and my email. And some people Facebook message me, because it's a Rock Lobster Facebook site.
You're very active on social media. So.
I put photos up all the time just because actually the guy in Flagstaff, Steve Garrow, is the one who said, well, you should start doing this stuff. Put your stuff up on the internet so people can see it.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing it.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, that way people don't forget about you. And also the customers who are anticipating the frame get to see it before the paint goes on.
Oh, that's good.
It's exciting. Yeah.
So if somebody were to order a frame, let's say today, it's late June 2022, when typically can you get a bike done these days? I know things change.
Probably between August and September of next year.
So
it's 12 to 14 months.
12 to 14 months. And they give you a deposit?
Yes, $350 deposit.
And then they just sit back with anticipation and wait for the big day.
Or
do you sell whole bikes, or you just sell frames?
I would sell whole bikes if I could get parts.
Oh, yeah.
Right now I can't, but hopefully it'll come back to being able to do that. I have a whole bike that is going to go out hopefully next month or August, but I'm waiting for a lot of the parts that are sitting on container ships out in the Pacific.
So when somebody orders a frame, you supply a fork with the frame? We used to build forks back in the day.
I still build forks.
You still build forks sometimes?
Some people just buy a frame. Some people buy a frame and fork, and headset, or just whatever I can provide. It just depends on their budget. Or
some people buy the frame and then they get their own fork.
Oh yeah, or they have a garage full of parts or another bike they're stripping parts off of that are compatible with the new frame they're getting from me.
You can get forks with the right geometry to complement whatever frame you build. And if you're designing the bike, you could tell them what fork is the right fork for that frame.
That's what I do, yeah.
Yeah, to make sure they don't. Because if you don't have the right fork, it could make the bike, could cause problems.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could not only cause problems, but all the hard work that you put into making this frame be a certain way, it could counteract all that.
So, we should talk a little bit about price.
I have not raised my prices due to inflation, and I'm trying not to.
Wow.
I try and keep my prices, I wouldn't say any custom bike is affordable, but I try and keep mine on the end where I am not limiting myself to a certain strata of income customer.
So what's the ballpark? What of the frames that you offer, the types of frames you build, is there a range?
Yeah, I think probably the least expensive thing I do is about $1,750, and then like the full race World Cup cyclocross frame set is $1,950.
Wow.
But then if you get into brazed frames, they're quite a bit more, like about $3,500 for a lugged frame or $3,500 for
you're still
building
lugged frames if people want them?
Yeah. And hardly anybody orders them. In the last decade, I've probably done maybe 3 or 4.
Lugs are beautiful, and I saw some examples that you built. I don't know if you have any in the shop, but I saw some that were at a show that you made that were fantastic.
Yeah, well, I try.
Yeah.
I'm not as good as the guys who do it all the time, but I do have the background of, the first lug frame I built was in 1978, and all I did for the first 6 years was lug frame, so I know how to do it. Yeah. It's just my patience level is probably not quite like the best guys. I look at what they do and I think about all the hours that they did just to get one little edge of a lug perfect. I think they're doing that to the entire frame. Am I going to do that? I said, yeah, I'll do it sometime. And then I get involved in building a lug frame just for fun between Christmas and New Year's, and I get done with it and I go, I could have taken it a lot further, but that's it. I'm not going to do any more,
Well, it gets to the point where sometimes something's good enough. You know, you can edit something you write forever, basically.
Yeah.
And at some point, the builder gets to choose.
Yeah.
This is good enough, you know, and that's your choice, really. And I'd be surprised if anybody would notice a difference riding the bike.
No, I don't think so.
You might notice a difference looking at the bike.
Oh, yeah.
It's the ride that counts. So.
Yeah, I don't build bikes to win ribbons at shows or to, you know, to get people to line up because of, you know, how I file my lugs or anything like that. I used to think I wanted that, but now really the thing that makes me want to keep building frames is when I build a frame for somebody and that person goes out and rides and says, this bike does not hold me back at all. You know, it does what I want it to do. It's just, it's not cramping my style in one way or shape or form. If anything, it's enhancing their riding.
That's a good segue to a little story. So I went to Big Bear to race in the National Mountain Bike Championships. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I brought a bike to race, and it was an oversized aluminum frame. Mm-hmm. And I rode the course the day before the race, and I hated the ride of the bike. It beat me to pieces. It was not a good bike. Mm-hmm. And I got back to the condo, and I told Brian, who was staying with me in the condo, I said, I can't race this bike. It's slow. It's not fast. And he said, well, you can ride my Rock Lobster. I said,
really?
Really? And he said, yeah, my race isn't until later in the day. So I raced the Rock Lobster. First time I ever raced one of your bikes. Mm-hmm. I got third place in the race.
Wow.
I swear it was the bike. The geometry on the climbs. I powered up the climbs. I flew down the hills, and it was a tough day. It snowed that day in Big Bear. Anyway, so I have an experience with the great riding Rock Lobster. So.
Okay, well, that's good. I had no idea you'd ever raced on one of my bikes.
Oh, yeah, I have. It was a mountain bike. Yeah. But, I mean, that's a good test of a frame builder. I mean,
what year was that?
It would have been in the 90s. It probably might have been 96 or 95, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Brian, I forget Brian's last name, but I have high regard for your work.
Wow. So, well, that's good to know. Yeah, I had no idea. That's great.
I think we covered a lot of ground, Paul. I think you're busy. You've got how many frames to build?
Between 60 and 70 right now.
60 and 70. It doesn't weigh on you all the time? I got to get this done. I got to get this done.
I try not to internalize it anymore. No, I just come here and do the best I can on any given day. Yeah. And I just know that I'm 66 years old right now. And so I don't know how many decades I have left, and so stress should not be part of the equation. This should be a joyful thing to do. And I know that the bikes turn out better, and it's better for the customer if I come in here and I'm doing something I want to do and I've been enthused about it. So
you have to like it if you've been doing it so long.
Yeah. I never thought I'd be a full-time guy, but I was playing in a band and I was driving all over California, and it just kind of occurred to me when I was playing one of the last gigs at this casino in Sparks, Nevada, like, you know what? I don't like this. I don't like the songs we're playing. I don't like where we're playing. And there's a couple people in this band who I don't like as people, and I don't think they really like me either. And I thought, well, you still got your little workshop, and the orders were starting to stack up at that point because I was building mountain bike frames. This is 87.
87. Wow.
Yeah, and so I thought, well, okay, I've got some savings. I'm going to ditch the band. I've got somebody else who wants the gig, so somebody can take my place instantly. And then I will try being a full-time frame builder for a while and see what happens. So that was January of 88.
January of 88, wow.
Yep. And I've had a couple close calls where business slowed down remarkably. The last one was in about 2003, I think, and where I thought I'd have to do something else, but it always picked up again. And since 2003, since the fall of 2003, I've been one of the busiest guys. Single frame builder, like one-person shop. I think I'm one of the busiest in the country, and
That's
have
awesome.
been. Yeah, I feel really fortunate.
So wait, I forgot one important question.
Yes.
I know Rock Lobster is the name of a song.
Yeah.
Is that where it came from?
Oh, yeah. I went to a show. It was the Talking Heads with the B-52s opening up, but I was mainly there to see the B-52s because the local college station had played their single. And I was coming back from a gig. It was like 2 in the morning. I'm driving down Mission Street, like about, I don't know, 10 blocks from my house. And they say, oh, this is a single from a group in Athens, Georgia. And you've got to hear it. It's really different. And I listened to it. I went, who the heck are these guys? Yeah, this is really different, and it's really funny and great. And I thought about that. And that was probably 1979. But I didn't call the bikes Rock Lobster until I started building mountain bikes. Before that, I just put my last name on them or the street I lived on. I had a few different little names for them, and then it occurred to me that I needed a different name for mountain bikes. And I didn't like all the macho names that were out there, like Stump Jumper, Prairie Breaker, Diamondback, whatever. I thought, yeah, those are appropriate, but it's not me,
Yeah.
I thought of mountain biking as a very chaotic and silly sport where people were falling off their bikes repeatedly, going over the bars and crashing, so I wanted something that was humorous, and Rock Lobster sounded like the one, so I've stuck with it ever since.
Well, it's a legendary brand now.
Well, I've spent enough time doing it, and they're all over the place. And the fickle thing about the frame building business is you don't know. You could be really, really good at what you do, but people have to want what you do. And when I was a hobbyist, I was just doing it now and then, building frames, and hardly anybody wanted what I was doing. I didn't have any publicity or whatever. But as soon as I came out with that Rock Lobster decal, that brand, then I started getting really, really, really busy. And since 1988, I've only had a couple slow summers. And then it's just been, how many of them can you build? I refuse work, I don't do all those repairs anymore.
Yeah.
I hardly ever do custom stems or custom forks anymore. I have to stay focused on just building the frames. And I think there's the decal on the name, I mean, the bikes have gotten pretty good over the years, but they didn't start out that way. But yeah, you have to have an identity. That's the thing with frame building. I mean, you have to be good at it. You have to be nice to people, but also you have to have some sort of identity for your product. It is a product,
Yeah.
And that's a thing that it's hard for people to come up with, and I guess I just kind of got lucky.
So if you were talking to somebody that came in here, some young, excitable bicycle guy who loves bikes, and he said, I want to be just like you, I want to be a frame builder, what would you tell him?
I'd say be prepared to spend a lot of years losing money, which I did. I wouldn't have been able to do this without, in the beginning, working 1 or 2 other jobs while I was doing the frame building. And also living really, really, really on the cheap, and then liquidating personal assets to fund the bad years. So be prepared that it might not pay for itself for a really long time or ever.
So working on frames all day long has to be demanding physically. And would you tell somebody it's manual labor. It's not sitting at a desk staring at a computer all day.
No, it's not. Especially when you start out, you might not have that many tools like machines. So there's a lot of stuff you have to do by hand. Like when I started out, I didn't have a power drill. I had a hand drill. And I had the files and a saw, hacksaw, and just a lot of physical work. It's not like digging ditches or carrying loads of bricks or something like that, but it is, there's physical tasks that need to be done, and there's using your eyes, really, really looking at what you're doing and thinking about it and not getting confused and trying not to be frustrated.
You have to get it right. I mean, if the frame is not aligned correctly, it's not going to work correctly.
No.
So you have to pay attention to details that matter a lot. I don't see an alignment table. Maybe there's one over there or something, but...
behind that curtain is a granite slab, but I don't really need to use it anymore. I used it for a really long time, but then I started putting frames on and realizing, I don't really, well, not perfect, but within tolerance, 20 thousandths or whatever. And also, for about 9 years, I taught a class at United Bicycle Institute once a year, 2-week class.
Wow.
And I saw that their alignment and philosophy and their alignment steps. And I realized that I was probably doing a lot of unnecessary stuff. And so now I know how to make a bike that's straight, really straight, probably straighter than most of the stuff out there. And the steps are less, and I don't have to use the granite slab anymore.
So Paul, I know you have a long racing history with your bikes. A lot of top guys have raced your bikes. And,
Yes, indeed.
What are some of the great racers and great performances that occurred on Rock Lobster Cycles bikes?
Well, pretty early on, in about 2003, there was cyclocross nationals, and I think Melody Metzger won the collegiate national championship on one of my bikes. Justin Robinson won the 30 to 34 on one of my bikes, and Sarah Curlin won the 30 to 34 in the women's nationals. So
3 national championships in 1 year?
Yeah, at one event. So that was kind of a shock. And then from that nationals, there were 3 elite women who got selected for the national team to race in the Worlds that were all racing on my bikes.
World championships.
Yeah,
wow.
and then there's a local Bay Area fellow by the name of Ron Riley, who has won at least a couple national titles on my bike, but then he went to Europe. Whoa. And he won a world title on one of my bikes, a steel one too.
Wow.
So yeah, so there is a world champion. And then at the elite criterium national champions, a fellow got bronze medal on one of my bikes, which was really unexpected, because that's a race where there's nothing but corporate bikes. It's all Trek and Specialized and Giant, and then a custom bike out there. Totally, out of the blue. And then probably the most recent one is, I think in 2019, I had a couple guys racing in the World Cup in Europe. And one of the fellows went down, Andrew Giuliano went down to Spain, and he got bronze medal in the UCI race in Spain on one of my bikes.
Wow.
That's a big deal. That's really unheard of in Europe. And then lots of people have won nationals. I have a cyclocross team, and Sarah Jordan in, I think, 2008 in Kansas City won a Masters national title. And then probably the biggest one is Aaron Bradford in Wisconsin, Verona, Wisconsin. I think it was 2013 maybe. Snowy race, won the single speeds. Nationals.
Speed.
Yeah, no, he's a tough guy. Yeah, it was a great field too. It was he was the toughest of the tough that day. There's Jackson Stewart and one other guy won a Madison national championship, and Jackson was on one of my bikes.
So you built a bunch of track bikes then?
Quite a few, yeah. I hooked up with a guy, a coach named Fareed Abraham, who was running the Los Gatos Junior Development at Hellier Park, and I probably built about between 40 and 45 frames for their program over the years.
Any easier to build? It seemed like they'd be easier to build, but...
There's less to it, but there's also the precision that track bikes have to be made. They have to be really, really, really tight. That the rear tire needs to be like a couple business card thicknesses away from the seat tube. And yeah, it's tricky, but there's less to do. I mean, there's no bottle mounts or cable guides or anything. So yeah. So I've had some track national championships. I don't remember all of them. I've had some people race in the Junior Worlds, Daniel Holloway on one of my steel track bikes.
Wow.
So I think he's still out racing on the World Cup. He's, I think, in his 30s now. But
the steel bike?
Yes.
Yeah, all steel. Wow.
Oh, yeah. And the guy on our cyclocross team, Noah Hayes, just completed the Unbound Gravel XL.
Oh, Unbound, yeah.
Yeah, the 340-mile version of it. He finished it in 26 hours and change, 600K.
All right, well, anything else?
Well, I'm the district champion.
You're a district champion?
Right now I'm the NorCal district champion.
For cyclocross?
Yeah, for my age group.
Wow, that's no small feat.
Well, if you don't read the fine print. I was the only one who showed up in that age group, so.
That's the way to win.
I rode really hard, I even crashed, but I could have gone at walking speed and still gotten the jersey. It took me 21 years to get it, but I finally did.
So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule today, Paul.
Sure.
And I know I learned a lot, and I expect the viewers learned a lot too, and appreciate you talking to us.
Oh yeah, no, I'm happy that you showed the interest, and that, and hopefully people out there gained something from what I had to say.
Thanks everybody for watching. You know how to reach Paul if you'd like to inquire about getting a custom frame.
Sure.
And I'll see you all in the next video.
All right.